So, hi everyone. Good afternoon. My name is Tabitha Schmaltz. I'm one of the software services managers here at Dean Dorton, and I am loving seeing all the familiar faces and names today. I guess I don't see too many faces, a few of you, but I've been lucky enough to work with many of you on a lot of implementation projects, support tickets, also your renewals. So this Enlighten event is always such a fun and informative one. So I am grateful that I was asked to be a part of it. Nikki, Linda, Philip, Dale, Brian, they've all done such a great job so far. And I saw a comment out there. It looks like Linda Walker put a comment out there that said that she always invites her coworkers to listen to Linda whenever she gets an opportunity to do so. And I agreed with that so much. What a treat it is to have all these great insights from so many different people and also direct from Sage Intact. This session specifically is going to be discussing ways that we can optimize our Sage Intact instances post implementation. So if you've already gone live on Sage Intact, you're wondering now what, hopefully this will start to pique your interest, get some ideas flowing on things you can do with like your next phase of using the system, even if it's been, 3 days, 3 months, or 3 years since you originally implemented. So take some notes. Also, if you are somebody who is still in all of the fun and exciting times that is implementation, you're still going through that cycle. Most of what we talk about today can still be part of your original implementation. So if there's something that's interesting to you and you want more information, just reach out to whoever's doing your implementation. All right, let's go ahead and get started. A few objectives we're going to touch on. So one of the things I found interesting earlier today was the results of Linda Pinion's polls. So when she was asking about what we're already using as far as automation and what areas we may want to look at, in fact, it was close to 70% of people on the call at the time were saying that they were not using any kind of automation at all. So I think this is a great time to pull out your notes and start to find 1 or 2 areas that we'd want to deploy something that would make your instance smarter, easier to use, and more fun even. Are we allowed to say that, Nikki? More fun? Can we make it Intact more fun?
Absolutely.
So we're going to look for ways to improve all the data that's coming into the system, reduce that human element by using bank feeds, match and create rules to streamline reconciliation. We're going to look at a few other things too, like the ways that automation can improve our AP workflows, also the general ledger review. And then lastly, we're going to look a little bit at organizing our communication, optimizing communications within our team, utilizing things like checklists and Sage Intact Collaborate. And we're going to do all of this in under 50 minutes. All right. So I'm probably going to be a little bit like Brian and talk a little bit fast just due to nerves, but that's okay. We're going to buckle up. We're going to take lots of notes. And if you have any questions at all, like Nikki said, go ahead and shoot those into the Q&A boxes and we'll get to those. All right, I know you've seen this before, but we got to do it again because everybody wants their CPE. So make sure you have your phones nearby or a second tab open to participate in your CPE. Go ahead and text that number and make sure that everybody is participating. We'll go ahead and start right away with a slide with a poll. So where are you at in your Sage Intact journey? So just so I have an idea of where everybody is at, and of course, Nikki, I'm going to back up. I am not seeing that little prompt.
That's no problem. I can share it.
Okay. So what we're trying to do is find out where are you at in your Intact journey? Are you still in implementation? This is still fun and exciting. Are you newly implemented in that honeymoon phase, still trying to figure things out? Have you been using Intact for a long time, or are you just here for the answers? You need the CPE. You're going to say, I'm participating, but you just popped your popcorn and want to hang out. All right. I know there's still going to be a little bit of stragglers, and I want to make sure everybody has an opportunity to participate to get your points. But it looks like the vast majority of everybody on this call has been using Intact for a bit of time. So perfect. This is a great time to be looking at things that are new in the system, things that you might not have deployed yet. If you are anything like me, sometimes you do things just because it's the same thing you've done before. We always say it's because of Sally, right? Same as last year. So what we want to do is find ways that we can work smarter, let the system work for us, embrace those new updates, and not just keep doing the same thing that we've done before just because that's the way we've always done it. I'm gonna go ahead and snag this back from you and pull this up. All right, so based on what we saw in that polling question, it looks like a lot of you are already post-implementation, and you're likely looking to figure out some information from this event to figure out the now what happens next. For many of you, the next steps are going to include personalizing the system and making it more you. If you haven't already started this with things like changing terminology to be more approachable, this is a great way to try to find a way to make the system feel more identifiable and increase your adoption by your team. It also helps make it feel less clunky. So, like as an example, we have equine clients. A few of you are on this call today. You've changed the dimension class to be horse. So just something as simple as that little easy adaptation of the terminology makes sense for their group and makes it more easy for their team to quickly adapt to it. But now is also the time where we start embracing ways to make the system smarter, easier. We want good data coming into the system to improve what we report on, and how we do that is by reaching beyond the basics of data entry. We're going to look to AI and other tools to reduce the human error. Tomorrow, just a quick plug for that session tomorrow, there is that session with Aaron Harris at the end of this, the overall program, and you're not going to want to miss that. He's going to cover all kinds of things AI, and we're just going to get a little peek at it today. Also, we're going to talk about automation, and that automation is going to continue to happen. So keep looking at the updates that Sage brings us 4 times a year to see new ways to optimize. All right, Nikki, we're going to play tag again. One more slide here. So I hope you didn't put your phones down. Your bank processes, we're going to jump right into banks. Are your bank processes super manual? You're not using any kind of bank feeds. You're utilizing bank feeds, but you're also manually creating all of those transactions that come in that are not already entered into the system. How many of you are using match and create rules? And again, for at least the Dean Dorton people on the call, you're just here for the answers, but anybody else as well. All right. I'm happy that the number of people that are using the bank feeds is starting to move up, that we have more people that are using those bank feeds at a minimum. We'll talk a little bit about bank feeds in just a moment, but part of this session is going to be about how we can optimize the system utilizing what is already part of the core program, that what you're already paying for. So this is awesome information for us to know. If you are one of these people in the A bucket that is not using bank feeds at all, just if you want to, give us a little bank, like just tell us who your bank is in the chat. That would be really awesome. So that way we have an idea of what banks you are using, and if we could currently help you with any of those bank feeds. All right, I'm going to snag that again. And so bank connections are one of the ways that most of our clients are dealing with data. I mean, Intact does stand for internet accounting, so there shouldn't be any surprise here that we're dealing with numbers. There are 4 main ways to get the information into the system. Okay, so the first is going to be a file import. This should really be like last resort. It's going to be where you're getting that data from the bank and you're importing like a CSV, and now with the new updates, you could be a QIF or the other files, the QuickBooks files from your bank. So those are going to be a little bit of a last resort. The next is going to be an indirect connection. This is going to be what's typically happening through like a third party connection. A lot of times there might be a fee for this type of a connection, and you also are subject to whatever whims that third party has as far as what pieces are going to pull over from your bank and what it looks like. So the way I view the indirect connection is going to be less control and more inconsistency, but it does typically have a little bit lower price tag. The third option is going to be a direct connection. This is going to be through the Sage Intacct connection, and we're going to dig a little bit deeper in this in just a moment. This one does not have a Sage Intacct fee up to 100 bank accounts, but there can sometimes be a fee from your bank at times. So just let us know. Many of our clients do find that there is actually no fee at all, and this can be a very reliable option because it's going direct from your bank into Sage Intacct. Now, if none of these work for you, if you've dropped your name of your bank into the chat feature so that way we could see what banks we're working with, and your bank does not have a file export, it does not have a way that we can do a direct connection to Sage Intacct, and you don't want to utilize a third-party product for an indirect connection, the fourth final option is a SIG integration. So SIG integration is direct with Sage, but it is part of their customization team. And that is a custom integration that is built directly for you, and it will help connect your banks to Sage Intacct. Because it's custom, it does mean that it is the most expensive option on the list, but it's also the most reliable. So just know these are the types of bank connections we could have. Now let's talk about how to get your bank set up. So there was quite a few of you that said you're not using bank feeds at all. This is really easy. I'm actually going to walk you all through how to set up your bank feeds right away on this call. Please don't go to Sage Intacct and start doing this and then forget all about our session. Stay here for the most part. You are going to get these slides afterwards, but I'm going to walk you through how to add bank feeds to your setup. And don't forget, you can always reach out to Dean Norton Support for assistance. So bank feeds is something that can be easy to set up on your own. You're going to navigate to company, then admin, then subscriptions. If you do not have the ability to go from company, admin, and then subscriptions, this is likely due to permissions. So please reach out to the admin inside of your organization, or again, to the Dean Norton team. Once you are inside of the subscriptions page, you're going to look for Sage Cloud Services, and you're going to turn this one on by toggling that little green toggle and then clicking the configure button. Nikki, I got a sound feedback. I don't know if there's someone with a question or if it's just something I'm hearing.
I'll make sure that everybody's muted. Thanks, Tabitha.
Thank you. All right, so from there, you're going to go into cash management and you're going to work on the banking cloud tab to connect each bank account. So I have a couple of screenshots here. If you go cash management, setup, checking accounts, you're going to have the tabs across the top, the details, check printing, bank file, etc. You'll click on banking cloud. Then you'll see a connect button. So once you click that connect inside of each of your bank accounts, you'll find a drop down and you'll find your bank on the listing. Now, if your bank has several different ways that it can connect, especially some of those larger banks, you will want to pay attention to the web addresses. So if there are more than one, just look at that address really closely. Make sure it's the one that is what you would go to if you were to log in directly through an internet browser. So just make sure it matches what we would do for your bank, and it will ask for your credentials. If your bank requires the use of a token to connect or any kind of like authenticator, it will still be supported here as well. So you can still use that for the Find Your Bank function. Now, when we set up the bank feeds this way, these transactions are going to be brought directly into the system, and they're going to go onto a tab on the cash management page that says bank transactions. So you're going to have a bank transaction page. From that screen, you'll be able to enter them manually from the list, which is a very reactive way of doing transactions in the system. You're basically doing the, incurring the charges or having the transactions happen, and then you're reacting to them. So your financials are a little bit behind when you're doing that. Or you can leverage the rules inside of Sage Intacct to kind of create a little bit more automation. So odds are you have some transactions that already exist in the system, and we just want to create the exceptions. So let's talk a little bit about those match and create rules. And it looked like quite a few of you are using the match and create rules if you have them at all. I do recommend these. I think that they really do bring a nice entry level AI to the system. The two type of rules that work hand in hand here are going to be our create rules and our match rules. We also have covered this topic in exceptional detail in a Cloud Byte session. So if you need a lot more information specifically on create rules and match rules, I would recommend taking a look at the Cloud Byte session for that in-depth review. Today, we're going to stay pretty high level. Again, we don't have a ton of time, but what we want to remember is that create rules are going to create transactions. So this is great for any items that don't need to post to the subledger. So think like your customer or vendor related transactions. You don't want to do those with the create rule. And you also the create rules are great for anything that is not needed to be reported on a 1099. Create rules are also perfect for any kind of transactions that are not already created through another process in the system, right? We're creating them for the first time with that create rule, so we can't have them already exist in the system or you're going to have duplicates. Make sense? On the other hand, we have match rules. So these rules are for transactions that already exist in the system, and we want the system to match the bank transaction to what we have already recorded in Sage Intacct. So this might mean that those items have already posted to our subledger, they've gone through AP or AR. They could be a purchasing or an order entry transaction that might have needed to be on a 1099. So lots of things that could have happened already. We've already recorded that. And so this is where we say we want the system to see what's coming through on that bank feed and match it to what we have on that bank file. Some of you are visual learners, so we have this nice little reconciliation decision tree that's going to help you understand how the system is determining what we're going to do with those transactions and then utilizing the match and create rules or the manual creation of a transaction, how that works towards the reconciliation. Okay, so when you create those match and create rules, when do they run or how do they run? This is a common question where we say, I've created those rules, but I can't figure out how to trigger them, right? So when you open the reconciliation screen inside of Sage Intacct for your bank account, that is the trigger. The match and create rules that we created previously are going to run at that point, and you'll have the ability to reconcile any outlier. So anything that is outside of the create rules or the match rules, maybe it looks like it might already be in the system, but we're not really sure. Whatever the rules are, we can deal with those exceptions. So a typical workflow is probably going to look something like this. You'll have a new transaction. We will go and say, okay, each of these transactions that come in, we say, does this have a subledger impact? If the answer is no, then we could use the create rule to create that transaction. And if the answer is yes, we wonder, is that transaction already in Sage Intacct? If the answer is no, we can create it using the more actions on the bank transaction screen. And if the answer is yes, then the match rules can help us. But either way, we are either creating that transaction from scratch, we are creating it through more actions, or we are matching it to something that has already been created. And then from there, the reconciliation will happen, and anything that is in the system that does not meet the requirements of something previously can be created or addressed or matched manually. And then from there, we reconcile the account. So it's important to note that bank transactions being matched automatically will be matched on the reconciliation screen already for you. So if you have been dealing with those transactions as they're coming in, you're matching them, that will already be completed on the reconciliation. You're dealing with only with those exceptions. And because of this, the reconciliation process becomes a lot quicker, right? So always think of the bank feeds coming in as a reconciliation assistant rather than, just a way that we can bring the transactions into the system. All right, I know that was a lot, but that was bank feeds. All right, so next topic that we're going to talk about is going to be our AP automation. All right, so AP processes. According to the IDC info brief, invoice ingestion tends to be the number one pain point in the AP process, and I'm sure many of you on the phone call can nod your heads with that one. When we think about the amount of time that is spent just getting your invoices from their raw form of in your inbox, in your mailbox, dropped off on your desk, all the way through getting them recorded into the system, approved, processed, and then paid. That amount of time just adds up like crazy. Here's some stats. I won't read all of these or spend too much time here, but it's easy to see that automating this process can save us a ton of time. So Sage Intacct had an early adopter program. They went and they reviewed this a lot during that process, and they saw the potential to reduce the processing time by up to 50%. So this would essentially save 2 to 5 days per month for a typical SMB or small, medium-sized business. So I know that that doesn't seem like a ton of time, but when you realize that all of you on this call have lots of facets to the work that you're doing, and none of us want to be spending an extra 2 to 5 days a month entering bills alone. So this is a way that we can kind of shave that off and be able to put our time into, a little bit better usage or other places that we wish that we had a few more hours. So we're going to talk specifically about the AP automation that is inside of Sage Intacct. So our AI adds extra intelligence by correctly identifying vendors. It understands different formats for names, dates, addresses, multi-line items, tax amounts. It even helps to locate the correct fields and then feeds them into a draft bill that is ready for approval and payment. It's going to spot and flag any kind of duplicates. And there's new features that are released, that keep being released, but they also have some new features that are coming out that will automatically make the general ledger coding suggestions. And it will learn based on what we're entering into the system. So as we have past transactions that are coming in and we're coding them, it's going to take those, the way that we've coded those transactions, personalized to each business user, and learn and enter them differently the next time. Some of the things they'll also be able to do is also matching up your purchase order numbers, detect and flag potential fraud, and recognize foreign currencies and languages. So there are things that the tool is continuing to get better. A lot of machine learning. I know that Erin's going to talk a lot about this tomorrow as well. Now, the AP automation continues to learn by working with you. So you're going to have these draft bills that are created inside of the system. And when that draft bill is first there, it may not be 100% correct, right? There's probably going to need a couple things adjusted by your team and things that are going on. So what will happen is when you open that bill and it isn't 100% correct, you're going to make adjustments. Your team's going to correct the bill. And the AI tool is going to see what changes you're making. And this is going to train the system, which is what we call machine learning. So like your assistant who makes a few more mistakes in the beginning, the AI is going to improve over time. And with every invoice that's extracted and the more data that's processed, the higher the accuracy will become and the greater the trust between what you are entering and receiving from the system and having it pre-coded and what you're processing. You're going to trust it better. That trust is just going to grow. AI is also going to learn from others too on a global scale. So Sage has what they call their Sage Digital Network. And that's also just understanding how their business processes are working too. So how does AP automation work? I'm not going to give you a full demo here. In fact, if you'd like a demo on AP automation, please just go ahead and drop an email into that ERP support at ddAFtech.com email address, and we're happy to set you up with an AP automation demo. But it's used by setting up an email address to receive bills, and that will automatically enter them as a draft bill for you. So what you'll do is you'll simply review the drafts, adjust as needed, and instead of looking up vendors and entering the data, that's already going to be done for you. So you're just going to be reviewing what's already there and helping to modify the coding if needed. Now, the more you use it, the quicker the AI will learn. So every time our AI is reading and extracting the invoice, it's going to recognize, it's going to learn, it's going to remember. If there's a correction, it's going to learn and remember, you're making these changes, it's going to continue to learn. So an invoice that you're getting from a vendor that you use often, so if you have a monthly vendor or a weekly vendor, something that you're doing a lot more often, those are going to reach that level of accuracy quicker. vendors that you rarely use, those ones may need more user corrections. Just anticipate that because it doesn't know how you work with those vendors yet. But Sage Intacct was able to report that users that are utilizing the AP automation tools have reported that they cut up to 50% off the bill in the bill entry time within a few weeks of regular usage. So pretty cool. All right, so how do I get started with AP automation? So we already talked about if you'd like a demo, just go ahead and drop a note into that email box. But this one is one that you cannot provision by yourself. So this one is something that you do need a provision through Dean Dorton support. So send that email in, talk to your implementation team if you are still in implementation about getting started with AP automation. As I mentioned, we'll create that email address for the invoices to be sent to. Typically, it's one per entity, and we'll work through that invoice approval routing and all of that with you. Now, a few things to note. One, this is a fee-based product. So while the module itself is part of the main system, this is part of your regular AP tool inside of Sage Intacct. There is a per invoice fee. Also, your entire AP team, approvers, everybody who's going to be part of this workflow, they do need to be licensed inside of Sage Intacct. And we do also see that this is not an integrated tool. This is 100% built inside of Sage Intacct. So if you're wanting a tool that is 100% inside of Sage Intacct, you're understanding you're going to utilize the approval workflows and such that are inside of Sage Intacct, as well as the way that we pay bills. This could be a perfect solution for you. So go ahead and let us know if this is something you'd like to take a further look at. All right, next we got the GL Outlier Assistant. So Linda kind of pinged a little bit on this one earlier, but we'll go ahead and just jump right into this. So many of our clients currently use journal entry approvals for one or more of your journals. Sage Intacct has gathered many data points on this and has stated that there are about 10 to 20% of all journal entries that are being entered inside of the systems overall. They're being made and then they require some kind of a correction. So when we poll our users, they're saying that it is a pretty good number of journal entries that require corrections. These corrections are typically manual in nature, and when we put these approvals in place, we are being required to look at every single transaction. Every single transaction needs to be reviewed, regardless of whether or not it was correct at the beginning, because we just don't know. Like, how would we know? So we have to get our team members to look at every single transaction. When we think about the accuracy of those reviews, it's based on a whole bunch of different combinations of what could be happening at the time of that review. We are trusting that the approver is diligent, that they understand what's going on, that they aren't overwhelmed at the time and don't accidentally miss something. We're trusting their past experience. How do they know that that is correct? How can they make a judgment call? The element of human error is still here. We're not even trying to hide it. So there's a lot of questions about how accurate is this really? It's only as good as the person who's in the seat. Now, GL outlier detection takes away a lot of that human element and looks at outliers in real time. So this is going to allow your team to focus on the exceptions. So we're looking for those anomalies in the system. So I have a couple of screenshots here that we'll go through. As you can see here, the outlier assistant is telling us that there are 2 items on the screen that have anomalies that we need to take a look at. The system is evaluating the coding of these transactions against all the other times that we have used similar combinations. So it's looking at the combinations of GL accounts and locations and departments and classes and all the ways that we have used those transactions in the past. And it's saying, is this something that we typically see, or is this something that looks really weird? A common question I get from clients when we talk about GL outlier detection is whether Sage is comparing the transaction and whether or not it looks weird to our own data, or if they're comparing it against all of Sage Intacct users across the entire Sage Intacct universe. And the answer is the system is only using your own data. So the system does require 30 days worth of transactions or a full month of transactions to be able to even return the anomaly. So if this is something you want to use, we could enable it now, and then by December, you'd be able to actually see these outliers or anomalies in real time. So this is one of the feedback screens. So here you can see the feedback, and it's saying at the top, these combinations of GL accounts and dimensions are unusual. So we do have some unusual historical matches have been found. It gives you a little bit of a feedback down in the bottom of the screen in the entries table. So this is giving you an ability to look at it and see, is this something that I want the system to think is normal and I want to approve it, or is this something that actually is incorrect and I do need to make an adjustment? This proactive review means that instead of waiting to review and change it all at the end of the month, I'm actually able to get that continuous review. The system is looking at these transactions as they're happening. And so I'm able to make those corrections immediately, have better idea of what's going on in my data, and feel more confident on it throughout the month instead of at the end of the month. And it also is going to reduce corrections overall because, we'll be able to spot things faster. We're not having to reissue financials. And the less time we spend on corrections in the system, the faster we close, right? We want to have a faster close and a more accurate close. Here's another workflow for the outlier detection model, another visual representation to help so you can see how this works. So it's important to remember the more we make adjustments, the more the system learns, the more it's going to adapt to what is correct. So we got to love that machine learning and how that all works together. Okay, go ahead and just kind of stay here for just a moment. But I do like, again, we are when you enable this, it does take that 30 days. That's that preparation side. Once that's configured, it's going to gather that data for the data model. You don't have to do anything different. Just use it as normal. The outliers, this is going to be part of your GL general ledger approval workflow, and it will flag those for you. And then you have that approver action. Now, the cool thing about GL outlier detection, this is a free update. So when this was rolled out as part of one of the release updates, this one was included for all parties so long as you are using the journal entry approvals. If you have those approvals in place already, this is a really natural recommendation to have you improve the system. If you aren't, this might be a good reason to consider, at least for even a single journal, and then go from there. So, maybe just pick one journal if you want to try it out, put a journal entry approval in place for that one, and then have the GL outlier assist you with that one. If you are ready to utilize GL outlier detection, you're going to go to Company, Admin, Subscriptions, and then look for AI and machine learning. Okay, so you'll want to turn that on. That will help to enable the GL outlier detection. There is a little bit of time that you need in order to have this, that you'll need the journal entry approvals turned on. You'll need 30 days for this to go into place. But then once those 30 days of data is completed, then it will start returning those items for your review. Okay, Nikki, we got a tag team one more time here. Sorry. But this is going to be specifically around collaboration. So we're going to change gears one more time. So when it comes to collaboration, how does your team work together? So this is, do we share information? And I know we talked earlier about how we collaborate in regards to the updates, like Linda was saying, how do we share the updates? This is just, on normal bills that are happening, normal transactions inside of the system, updates, any kind of questions regarding anything. So there's a few of you that share all information in an easy to use format. Probably some really cool formats too. I'd love to know some of those. I do see we have 18% are on that wish list that say it would be great, but we don't have anything to use like that currently. you're in the right place. Let me just tell you, we'll talk about that in just a second. We're a small group and we just talk, no need for tools, right? You probably even share an office. You probably just holler back and forth. And then we're just here for the answers, of course. So perfect. We're going to talk about this. I believe that no matter how big or small your team is, we want to make sure that we are making sure we over communicate and make it easy for somebody else to pick up where you're leaving off. Okay, let me snag this from you. And okay, we're going to start with checklists. So checklist is something that we have, it's newer inside of Sage Intacct. In the last year or so, they've pulled out, really started doing a push on the checklist. If you have a monthly review process, you may want to consider utilizing checklists inside of the system. So checklists allow you to keep track of any internal processes, like month-end close are a great way to use checklists. But this also helps to keep relevant assignees and stakeholders in the loop with updates as to what things are happening and where they're at in the status of overall. Also helps keep you in touch with all of the other business activities that are happening. So when we create a checklist inside of Sage Intacct, when we can put that inside of the system, what we are doing, it may seem really like just basic, like why are we putting this checklist here when I could just talk to the person who's sitting next to me? What we are doing is we're actually creating that standardization. We're able to replicate, we're able to grow, and we could see where we're at in the process at any given time. So this is a screenshot that's going to show checklists, a little bit of the checklist setup here. If you need to provision your checklist, this is going to be under company, all, and checklists. And then you could set up your checklist. You can have multiple types of checklists for different purposes. And you can import them as well as manually create them. So you can see that there's a lot of data on the screen. It could tell you the assignment name, descriptions, your start and end dates, who it's been assigned to, what's the status of it, what's the percent completed, when did it actually finish. So we have a lot of information that is in here. And one of the really cool things is that the updates of this list or where we're at any given point can be emailed out to individuals. So there are functionality to email out those checklist status. All right, the next, I know that was a really quick piece on checklists. If you want to help get your checklist set up again, so go ahead and reach out to our team and we can help get you started on that. Collaborate is another one that is really simple to use. Collaborate is a tool that we have communication within Sage Intacct for our teammates. So this communication lives inside of Sage Intacct. It leverages Salesforce Chatter. So it's inside of Sage Intacct. It utilizes the CRM tools that are there. And if you do not use Salesforce, that's totally okay. It's not required for you to have that. What this will do is it'll speed up communication because everything's right at your fingertips. It connects the team inside of the environment that we're able to have conversations back and forth. We can have our chatter put directly into transactions, put it directly on a journal entry, directly on an AP bill. So that way anybody is able to see it that has access into that system. And it encourages the team to create those efficient work patterns. We're not leaving the system that we're working in to go to another system to talk or to move. Instead, we have all of the data inside of the system. Once again, talking about ways that we can optimize the system without increasing any kind of costs on the system. This is another part of Core. This is a free feature to enable Collaborate. So if you are not currently using Collaborate, this is an easy one for us to put in place. So here's a little screenshot. This is a quick way to show you how that chatter might look. It's very similar to your social media pages. So what we could do is we could set up preferences on what you get notified and what you don't get notified about. So if you want to know about things that specifically talk about you or talk about things that you are involved in, you can have those ping you or notify you. But you can also come in and just see all of the communications. You can also have different teams or separate feeds for different purposes. So our teams here our teams here at Dean Dorton use groups to help segment communication within departments. So you can even see what is coming through on those departments. You could see all of the different ways that you could see the feed or what you're following. And you can tag individuals as well, which pings them and knows they know that they need to come in to talk. So while this is a great screen to show you just overall, like more like a social media wall, how would you use this in regards to transactional communication? So this is an example of having that communication live inside of Sage Intacct. So practically all the pages inside of Sage Intacct house additional conversation spots where you can add notes. So you can see this posts or files, this little area down at the bottom of the screen that helps to give us a space for that additional conversation. So this journal entry is going to show about how we have questions about where data came from, was this validated by somebody else? We can even upload files to help support the transaction or provide that insight to other people. Now, anybody who knows me or has been in a room with me while I've given a presentation knows that I love to live by a principle that we're all winning the lottery and we're not showing up for work tomorrow, okay? So when that happens, I know you're not going to be wanting to sit on the beach, you're sipping your cold drink in your favorite spot, and then get a phone call from a former coworker to find out what was going on with that one thing that some people were working on before you left, right? So this way, all of your notes, all of the communication, all of the backup is put into a place where everybody is able to see it inside of the system. And so anybody is able to open up this transaction and pick up right where you left. And of course, that is always based on permissions. There's no digging necessary, no trying to find that email or that message. All right, so looks like I talked a little bit fast too, so there might be some questions, but before I get to the question slide, there are always going to be like, how can I get more out of this system? So, I have a few other thoughts here on ways you could get more out of the system besides all of the things that I've already talked about, but I do want to go through these ones quickly as well. So besides what we've talked about already, if you're going, well, how do I know if I've optimized my usage of Sage Intacct? We get this question a lot. I know at your health checks, your annual health checks, this is one of the questions that I help clients answer all the time is, do I have the right modules? Am I getting enough out of those modules? And what other modules are available for me? So the first question you want to ask yourself are you using all of the modules that are part of your current subscription? If you do not know what you are currently subscribed to, please ask. But everything that you are currently subscribed to, you want to make sure you're actually utilizing them. So if you have advanced modules, if you have modules where you maybe didn't set all the parts and pieces up, those are great ways that you're already paying for those pieces. Let's make your system smarter or make sure that you are utilizing all of the parts and pieces of that current subscription. Another way to see, well, and before I move on that piece, another thing, when we say all the parts and pieces of your current subscription, I know everybody on this call is using the core modules. So core module obviously is going to include your general ledger and AP, but it also includes things like purchasing, order entry, prepaids, collaborate, bank feeds. All of those pieces are still part of your core product. So you want to make sure you're using as much of that as you possibly can without having to spend any other dollars. Then let's look at all of those advanced modules as well. The next thing you want to do is if you are an admin, if you are a full admin on the system, what I would recommend is that you go in and check your permissions. Make sure that you have them set to all in every module. And one little caveat to that, if you do set it to all in all modules, there is on your company tab for the permissions, uncheck the box that says clear company data. I like to do that just because if you are going to clear the data, you want it to be intentional. So that way you have to give yourself permission to clear that data and then clear the data, but just remove that opportunity, right? But make sure that everything's set to all in every module. And this isn't especially true after quarterly updates. Okay, we have a quarterly update that is happening the second week in November, November 8th. So you do want to make sure that you have that set to all after quarterly updates. And the reason why is because many times we have new features that are an enhancement, new things that are coming into the system. And those features a lot of times have their own set of permissions. And those permissions are not automatically given to admin when they are rolled out. So you could be missing out on a really cool part of the product, something that's been updated or rolled out for a while, and you don't even know about it because you don't see it. The next thing is, are you using statistical accounts? So are you using those statistical accounts inside the system, which are ways that we track non-financial data? If you have any kind of non-financial tracking that you would typically do like in Excel or something else, those are really fun things to pull into Sage Intacct and include with any of like your financial reporting or other types of dashboards. Even a really simple statistical account such as headcount or maybe customer count can be automated inside of Sage Intacct, and we could pull those into budgeting and financial reports. For instance, if you wanted to keep head count of the number of employees you have, and you wanted to just see the average revenue per employee, or maybe average expense per employee, or let's talk about customer counts. If we wanted to do a customer count and then do an average sales cost the average sales cost per customer. These are all really simple statistical accounts, but you can include dozens of these. Any of those pieces that you normally are tracking outside of the system, bring them into the system to help with your reporting. Now, the last thing I challenge you to do is think about everything that you're doing outside of the Sage Intacct system. Just start one at a time and think, how can I improve this process? How can I make it smarter or easier to work on? So our team here at Dean Dorton is happy to help explore these options with you regarding these areas. And we can also look at any other spots that kind of feel clunky or not as intuitive as you hoped and see if there's ways that we can optimize what you currently have or even new features that Sage Intacct has offered. All right, that was a lot of talking. So we do have a few minutes here for some questions.
You are right. That was a ton of info, but I think it's very good for everyone. I haven't seen any questions come in yet, but I am going to drop in the chat that support email address as well as the link to our Cloud Bites playlist on YouTube. So once we've all had some time to process and maybe go back and look over the slides, when you do come up with some questions, that info will be right there for you to reach out and get some answers.
Yeah, perfect. And here's my contact information, which will also be in the slide decks that are shared with everybody. The best way to reach out to anybody on the team is always going to be the ERP support at DDAF Tech email address. That's always the best way to start. But our team's really excited to chat with you about new ways that you can optimize your system. All right, I'm all set.
Okay.
Nikki.
Actually, Tabitha, I have a question
Oh,
in
awesome.
the Q&A. So Alexis asks, what are best practice suggestions for using checklists? We run our monthly closing on business days, not calendar days.
Yeah, that's a good question. So what I would do is, I guess the first question would just be, let's take a look at what that looks like. The overall checklist, make sure you can have it documented. And if the members that are part of that closing workflow, or if they're all part of Sage Intacct, what we could do is just break that into manageable pieces and assign them. I always say start with the bigger pieces of your checklist, and then you could always add smaller sub pieces to those checklists. And because the checklists themselves don't impact any of your financial data inside the system, it doesn't hurt to set up one or two checklists just to see how you like it and how you might best utilize it. If you need some assistance with that one, again, go ahead and you could drop us a message, and I'm happy to give you a call and we could look at it together.
All right, and another one. In permissions, there's checklist and also assignment. Do we need both?
Yes, so if you're going to be someone who is going to assign the checklist to people, then you need the assignments to be able to edit those assignments or assign them to individuals. If it is somebody who the checklist is happening to, you just need to be able to see the checklists and be a part of the checklist. If you are not part of the workflow at all for the checklist, then you don't need either permission.
Okie doke. We've got a few rolling in.
Oh, good.
So Ellen asks, if you have a monthly checklist, do you have to recreate the checklist every month?
No, so you can actually, it will recycle, the checklist will recycle. Now, in full disclosure, the checklist itself doesn't have like teeth to it where it's going to prevent something from happening. It is really like a checklist for everybody to see the status of what things are at, but it's better than writing it on a post-it on your desk, right? So hopefully in future releases, there'll be more teeth to that, but you currently do not have to recreate that checklist.
Great. And Grace does not see checklists under the company all section. What might be the reason for that?
It could be that it's not enabled yet, or she might not have permissions. So she may have to go into her permissions section to turn it on first. And Grace, I can send you a couple screenshots after this if you still don't find it, but double check your permissions first. And then once you have permissions to view those checklists, it should be under that screen.
All right. And another one, for more clarification on the checklists, what does the checklist will recycle mean? How does it happen each month?
Yeah, so I think what I'll do, Nikki, is I'll get the like a little recording and I'll send it out with over to you, so that way when we send out the slides, we could send that out as well. The task list on the checklist will be available. So if we say that this happens every month, there's a list of 20 tasks. That task list can be reused. So it will just like clear out the dates on that list to be assigned again. I will have to double check. I don't know that it currently has like where the users can stay in that checklist. I'll double check. I do know that our outsourced accounting team utilizes that checklist quite a bit. So I'll see if I can get some further clarification on what pieces are part of that recycled.
Okay. It sounds like that might be a good topic for a future Cloud Bites.
Oh, Nikki's wheels are turning.
Here I go. All right, so that is all I see in the chat right now, and it is time for our break. So thank you, Tabitha, as always, for a great presentation. And we'll take a little break and reconvene at 4 p.m. Eastern.